Hi, this is Greg Anderson. I'm the broker owner at RE/MAX Advisors West in Chaska, Minnesota. I want to talk about agency and the agency relationships in a real estate transaction in the state of Minnesota. When you hire a real estate agent, you're actually hiring the firm, the brokerage. So, for example, and by the way, the agency form, I'm going to back up just a smidge. The agency form is not a contract for representation, it's simply a disclosure. It explains who works for who. So it's very important that you have that conversation early, or that you understand the concept early, because it can impact your ability to negotiate going forward, whether you're selling or buying. So, for example, if you were hiring a broker to sell your home, they would be a seller's broker, a listing agent. They would act in your best interest. Basically, they have several fiduciary duties. They owe you loyalty. They have to act in your best interest. They owe you obedience. They have to do everything you want them to do, as long as it's lawful. That's usually around making sure you don't discriminate, those kinds of things, full disclosure. They have to disclose to clients material facts which would potentially affect their use and enjoyment of the property. They have to keep your secrets secret. They have a confidentiality responsibility. They have a responsibility to give you reasonable care, and then they're accountable to you for accounting or for the earnest money. So, if you hire our firm represents your interest. A buyer calling off the sign may or may not be represented. If they're not represented and they're not under contract with our firm, they're a customer, you're the client, we owe you fiduciary duty. They're a customer, we treat them fairly, we give them with respect in all the disclosure issues pertaining to the house, but when push comes to shove, we're negotiating in your best interest. Now, the flip side of that is you hire us to help you buy a home. Any other firm in the state of Minnesota would represent the interest of the seller, and that would include other RE/MAX offices. RE/MAXs are independently owned and operated franchises. So unless it's listed in our little office in Chaska, even if it's other RE/MAX offices, the other big companies, they would be representing the interest of the seller. Our firm would be representing your interest. And if those were the only two options, we wouldn't even need this form. It's kind of self-evident. However, there is this other thing. Let's say that I have a property listed to sell, our firm does, and another agent in the firm has a buyer that wants to see that property. The only way that we can put those two people together is if both of them agreed up front to agree to something called dual agency. What dual agency means is that we're not aggressively advocating to the detriment of one side or the other. Both parties' secrets, if you will, regarding price, terms, motivation for entering into the transaction would stay their secrets. We'd be putting the transaction together, but we would not be aggressively advocating to the detriment of one side. There is another thing called facilitator. Best example of a facilitator situation, if someone called and said there's this house listed down the street and that we don't have listed and we don't have a contract with them, it's almost like you're working for the transaction as opposed to for one side or the other. And again, there's one other thing that's kind of a big deal, and that's the notice regarding predatory offender information. And basically what that means is that in Minnesota, if a buyer has concerns about anyone in the community being a registered predatory offender, that the onus is on them, the buyer, to do their own due diligence. It's not incumbent on the real estate professionals nor the seller to say, yeah, the guy down the street, not so. The way you'd find out that information is through local law enforcement, which, for example, here would be Chaska Police Department, Carver County Sheriff's Department, or you can contact the Minnesota Department of Corrections or go to the website. So this was kind of a fast overview of the form. Your RE/MAX professional will be able to explain it in greater detail, but I just want to make sure everybody that you had a basic overview. Thanks for listening.